Oh, thank you guys. So you guys probably have seen me if you've been to other events. So I work in the machine shop. I'm a machinist. Actually, I'm a tool and die maker by trade. So basically a machinist who kind of makes big molds. So anything that's plastic injection molded came out of a metal mold, right? And so I learned the skill set, went to school to become a tool and die maker. And now the company I've been with, Tormach, I've been with for about 6 years. Now I do technical pre-sales engineering. So folks call and say, I want to make a widget, or I have a FIRST Robotics team, and let's talk about the parts I want to make, and can you pair me up with some machines, equipments, fixtures, things to hold the parts, things to cut the parts. And so I kind of step them through this thought process. Okay, I'm going to step way back into the late 90s. When I graduated high school, I was a journalism major originally. I hated math, I hated science, I hated it all because I thought I'm horrible at it. I think the best grade I ever got in math, a D, but it wasn't math that I was bad at, and I didn't realize it until into my adulthood. I dropped out of college my first year when I went to the university, and I became a mom early. I was a 19-year-old mom, and life was not easy. But now I'm looking at all of you ladies here, and I know that at some point you guys are probably going to have obstacles in your life, but you're first women. The thing is, you look at obstacles as something to overcome. And I kind of fell in love with FIRST. We didn't have FIRST in my high school. I went to a very small farming community school. My dad used to pick me up Briggs & Stratton motors, and I would pick them apart, figure out what's wrong with them, put them back together, and really do nothing with them other than I just enjoyed the process. And when I watch you guys in the pits, it seems like that process, that's what you're taking the most away. Because the thing that impressed me most about FIRST is it's not so much about the winning, it's about the takeaways. All of you guys in this room have developed lifelong friendships because of it. This is my 5th year in FIRST, and honestly, I think the thing that impressed me most was my first time. It was in La Crosse here, and I couldn't believe the line for the bathrooms. And that has never happened to me. And I'll tell you why, because when I started in machining, I am the only girl that I've ever worked with as far as like in the machine shop. And my first time coming here, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all these girls. Look at all these girls that are wielding tools. And you guys are owning it. And I just kind of felt like this is, these are my people, these are where I belong. And I keep thinking, I want things to be easier for you further down the line, but not so easy that you become complacent. And I'm overwhelmed at, your ability to troubleshoot and your ability to adapt. And I think for me, watching the last 2 years of the pandemic, our superpower isn't our ability to adapt and conquer all those obstacles in front of you. And I'm delighted to see more and more women in STEM. I think, we still have challenges, but we're growing in numbers, and there's so many of us, and there's so much more you can tackle as a team. I'm not like a very formal speaker. I don't have a speech. I just came up here. I would actually love to start a conversation with you guys and find out if there's any questions that you may have about, starting a job in engineering or math, science, the trades. Yes.
Does it get easier with the men?
It does. It really does. We're all here together. I don't mind being a little honest. There are always going to be those few. It's not because you're a girl. And you kind of, I found myself falling into that trap, and I'm like, why do they hate me because I'm a girl? I was a farm girl. I'm like, I'm good at what I do. I think you learn to take it better. I think you change as much as the guys around you change. I've been in shops where I was the first female. Actually, that's most of my jobs. And they're like, wow, I never realized that women were so good at this. And I'm like, well, the machine doesn't care that I'm a woman. The only people that care are the ones that see me, and they're like, you're a woman, so therefore you can't do it. And to me, I'm like, that kind of boxes us all into this. I might be a girl, but I can be a girl, I can be a machinist, I can be a robotic tech. I'm not just a girl, just like a boy is not a boy, It gets easier once they see that you are serious about what you want to do. I think a lot of guys are like, oh, you're just here because, you want to show up the boys. And that's not why we do this, right? I don't think there's anybody in this room who jumped into FIRST because they want to show the boys. I think you did it because you like the challenge, right? You love what you're doing. I I see you guys smiling, laughing, joking, dancing, having a great time together and solving problems together. And to me, I'm like, that is one of our superpowers, you know, we're adaptable. It is, I think it's gonna get easier too for every generation from now on after, because I notice like this generation, there's so much more passion for the trades. And every year, you know, there's more and more women blazing the trail. So it doesn't mean that, you know, we're all gonna follow the same path, but I think that, you know, the more women that walk down this trail, we kind of wear down, make it a little easier terrain for that first section. And then the next group of women are gonna go further. But even at this point, I mean, I can't think of any jobs in the top of my head that, you know, a woman couldn't do as well as men. If you guys think of one, let me know, because then I gotta find a way to challenge it. But, so that was a good question though. It does get easier. Yes?
What was kind of like the click that made you know this was what you wanted to do?
Oh my gosh, okay, so I'm not gonna lie, originally it was, I wanted to be able to feed my family. But so I went to college right out of high school, and I'm not saying don't go to college after high school, but I wasn't sure. I was a good writer. That's all I knew about myself. I never really pushed myself to find out what I was really good at. I knew I was good at writing, so it only made sense that I was gonna be a writer. But I knew that when I went to college, I was missing something. So I'd do my homework and I'd write, but even like I worked for the school paper, and I'd sit there and I'm like, I just couldn't describe things. You know, it was like something was flat. Yeah, I can write a good paper. There's none of me in that paper. It's like, okay, I can put some words together, make it sound good, and get a passable grade. With machining and everything, to me, the idea that I had a thought, my own original thought, and I thought, man, life would be easier if there was a tool that did this thing. I have the power now to take, you know, an idea that I woke up thinking about, man, I wish they had this. And if I want it, I'm just gonna go make it. And to me, that's where that spark came. When I had to do some soul searching, I actually sat down and wrote a list, like, what am I gonna do? You know, and I was a single mom. And I'm like, going to school is hard, especially when my husband and I had started dating, and we had 3 boys between the 2 of us. And I'm like, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna get started? This is gonna be impossible. It's gonna be hard. But then I was thinking, is it any more impossible than what I'm doing right now? Which was, I had a full-time job and 2 part-time jobs. So I worked in a coffee shop in the morning, went and worked my regular 8-hour day, and then I'd bartend in the evening. And so I was pretty much working 16 to 18 hours, but I kept telling myself it's too hard to go back to school. It's too hard, but then I'm thinking, I'm literally working 18 hours a day, and I'm worried about, you know, going to school. And I kind of fell in love with machining that first day, walking in and using my hands, because it brought back, there's something that happens to me. I don't know if you guys ever get it. I call it a light bulb moment. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like all of a sudden you're working at a problem and you're kind of frustrated but kind of excited because it's really fun. You're trying, kind of like you get that Wordle that, you know, that you can't figure out, and you're like, and then it's all of a sudden it pops there and you're like, duh. Oh my gosh, it's like the clouds open up and yeah, for me that's the same thing. Like when I solve a problem or a challenge, like someone brings me a part that's, you know, they're like, oh, this might be impossible to machine. And I'm like, you said the right thing, because you told me it might be impossible. Well, we're gonna make it possible. And to me, it's that drive, being able to maybe not just prove it to the world, but prove it to myself that I am this good. And all of you are this good, which is why you're sitting in this room. So. More questions? Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite part of working in the STEM field?
Let me see. I mean, honestly, it's got to be the process. The problem that's there in front of me that I can't quite get my hands on in the moment when I actually do achieve it. I just had this thought, and I was like, I really want to make this thing, and now I'm holding it. I mean, to me, it's how do I get from the idea in my head to the part that I'm now holding, that tangible, that's the other thing. You can defend your work with something that you've made, right? You know how like some people like, oh, you know, that paper you wrote was kind of dumb. That sounds horrible, but you know, like people are like, oh, you know, I didn't really like that paper, I didn't like that book, I didn't like that song. what we do is non-disputable. You know, you look at something and it's like, I met the tolerance, I met the fit. I am showing you in my hand, like I made this part exactly to spec. So to me, it's also that kind of, and there's a little bit of a confidence boost there too. You know, you gotta have that little ego shot once in a while. But yeah, I think to me, it's just the whole process I enjoy.
You got any tips for girls who are kind of interested but unsure about going into this field?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, my best advice is something that I think is going to be much easier for you guys than it was for me. And feel free to come down and see me. Find yourself female mentors, or try to find yourself a couple mentors. Because there's sometimes you're in a situation when I first started, and getting back to the original question, does it get easier? When I first started in the field, the first couple of years were hard. I'm not going to lie, I had my fair share of sneak away and cry in the bathroom moments. Because, there were people doing not great things. There were some guys that were kind of not very nice. They came around. It just took them a little while. This is new for them too. They're thinking there's a girl in the shop. This is new. Part of it, I think, is they're a little scared too. They're not sure what the new girl's gonna be like. What am I, and so I think that's part of it. And my other piece of advice is not just get female mentors, but make the friendships with the people that you're making with in this room right now. It's really important to have allies or an alliance, with other people who are going through similar situations. It just makes you feel a little less isolated and a little more willing to go out there and keep moving forward. Because the problem with women in STEM, and it's not a problem so much, but longevity has always been the issue, where they're a lot of women enter STEM, a lot of women don't last. And I think it's because we need to be in charge of building our own support system, because nobody out there is going to. There's no guys that are going to say, hey, I think the women should have a support system. So I think developing those, networking, developing those friendships and those relationships really help.
Do you have any tips for asserting yourself when you're being excluded?
Okay, so this is honestly my worst. This is my worst area. I am horrible at being assertive. I have gotten a lot better. I like to be the nice, happy person. But I think a lot of it comes down to I've gotten better about slowing down and stopping and saying, you know what? No, this is a good idea. Because I talk myself out of stuff, I think, more than anybody else ever would. I always think if I pitch an idea, everyone's going to think it's dumb. Even if I know it's a good idea. And once in a while, I take that risk and I'm like, hey guys, I'm actually thinking this. And when the idea works, I'm like, I got to put this in the back of my mind so I remember that, yes, my ideas are good. Because, sometimes, as much as I'm very good at, appearing to be incredibly confident, I do tend to be a lot less assertive. And that's actually been my goal. That's my goal at work right now, is more being a little bit more of an advocate for myself, because I do struggle with it. It's really easy to get talked over. And when it happens over and over, you begin to feel like, well, maybe it is that I have nothing to say of value. And I think a lot of the times, there was that saying that was, stand up and speak your mind even if your voice shakes. I can't remember if that was Margaret. I don't take credit for that quote, but there was a quote that said, stand up, speak your mind even if your voice shakes. And, it's getting easier, but I have to constantly remind myself. I'm actually really glad you asked that, because I've never been asked that, and I'm like, that's my number one area of improvement that I need to work on. And that's why I'm really excited to see all these other young women, because all I see right now when I'm looking at all these faces, I see people who are going to be succeeding. And I know that 5 years from now, when you guys come back as mentors and I'm still running the CNC machine in the machine shop because I like doing it, you're going to be telling me these wild, crazy stories about your success and how you're coming back and you want to share that with the organization that kind of helps you get started. It's kind of funny because I accidentally got looped into doing FIRST Robotics. Like I said, I didn't grow up with it. I didn't know anything about it. other than I had started at Tormach, and they said, hey, do you want to help with this event? They're making robots. And I'm like, I don't know anything about making robots. They're like, no, we need a machinist. And I'm like, I'm like, oh, so you just need parts made like ahead of time? They're like, no, while you're there. I'm like, oh, this sounds great, because it's the kind of stuff I love doing stuff on the fly. But I absolutely fell in love with it because all the like the friendships and the relationships and all the networks and everything that, you know, I've experienced coming through here, it's changed me, who I am. I honestly think you guys give me a lot more confidence than I ever banked on. You know, everybody's so positive, and I talk to a lot of the other mentors and a lot of the students, and I just love this world where everybody's rising to this challenge together. The other thing that I think that this is going to give you is that resilience, that ability to adapt. When things that are less than ideal happen, things like global pandemics, things like global supply chain issues, things in your own personal life, STEM has actually helped me through. Last year, so I kind of had a little bit of a rough year last year. I have kind of a connective tissue disorder. I had lost the majority of the feeling in my fingers and toes. They started turning black. It's an immune system thing. My immune system decided to attack my hands, and I'm very, very, very protective of my hands because I use them every single day. And things are better. Obviously, everything's working. I've been taking my medication, but I kind of, being able to slowly dive back in and using some of I love like polishing. I know that sounds crazy, but I love mold polishing. I love that slow, meticulous stuff, and it helped me. I mean, and they're not 100%, I'm not gonna lie. But I know that I have other options too, STEM develops the brain just as well. Even if I had lost my hands, being a woman in STEM, I know that I have other attributes that I can use. So it's not just that one skill. I'm not just a machinist. You're never just an engineer. That's just one categorization of what you do. I mean, you develop all these skills by going through all of these challenges. And I do think that it gives you that bounce back that you wouldn't otherwise be able to have. And I don't know, I love the versatility of STEM. I love that you're never stuck in one place, and there's always somewhere to go just a little further. So, and times always change too. And so does technology. So I feel like STEM has changed. I mean, it's just been astronomical over the last 5 years. But it is rewarding though. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. And I'm really excited for you guys too, because I mean, I love seeing, every time I come to these events, I see more and more women. And it makes me feel hopeful too, that, things are getting better, things are moving forward, and it makes me feel like we're going to be living in a much better world in the future as well. Don't forget to advocate for each other too. If you see, another colleague or another, teammate that's constantly getting drowned out, or even if you're not advocating for them, give them a little a nudge, hey, it's okay, I'm here with you, because sometimes it does feel awfully lonely out there on that branch when you're sure that this is the right thing. But how do you voice that? Especially when you get people who exude, confidence around you, and you're like, okay, I'm just, I want to be nice. And you can still be nice and assert yourself. I'm just trying to find that line myself, honestly. I always want to be very welcoming, very helpful. And then I also end up overloading myself that way, which is never good either. So cut yourself some slack and allow yourself to make mistakes. I make lots of mistakes. I try to make sure everybody knows that I make mistakes. But I feel like sometimes we often put so much pressure on ourselves because we do want to show that we belong. We want to show that this is something we're capable of. It always feels like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm harder on myself than I am on anybody else. And I'll make mistakes, and I'm sure Monty's going to watch the clip, and then he'll be like, oh, it was great, Jenny, and I'm going to look at it and say, oh my gosh, how many times did I say And oh my gosh, how many times my brain blank, and why am I touching my face when they told us not to touch our face? And I will sit there and I will watch a video that we do for our company, and I will just beat myself up. And I'm like, okay, I need to keep my hands down to my side, but then I have a hard time talking because I talk with my hands. But when I watch videos, I'm like, why do I look like I'm having a seizure? And then I'm like, well, it's probably because it's in fast forward because I don't want to hear myself, so that's probably it. But it's still like, cut yourself some slack because usually you are your worst critic. Oh, I think I'm going to hit her, then I got you next. Okay.
For me personally, what got me into STEM was, this is kind of embarrassing, but I was watching the Fosters and I saw how much fun Mariana was having in robotics. And so then I joined, and I also had a really good teacher who inspired me in middle school.
The teachers, everybody's got that one teacher, right?
I think that with STEM, like compared to anything else, I think STEM really challenges you to approach like problems in a creative manner. Like there's not one clear answer, one clear solution to any question, and so I really enjoy just like being able to like take ideas from other people, but also there is the option of doing it my way and like just keep going at it until something works.
Right. Kind of that, the troubleshooting part of it, let's see if this works, that doesn't work, but maybe if I just tweak it a little bit and now it might work. And STEM's not linear, right? It's more secular, I guess would be the term. There's no, when you do anything in STEM, it's not step one, do this, step two, step three. It's like, here's your problem. How do you take this problem and get over here where the problem is solved? And there's just so many routes you can go, I don't know, it's the choose your own adventure. I don't know, do they still make those books? Yeah. Oh, they do, okay. Those are like the best books when I was in school. But then I would end up reading like every possible ending there was, because I didn't know if I picked the right or wrong, and the whole point of it was there was no right or wrong. But I still had to figure out like, oh man, I shouldn't have went this way because I like this ending better. But yeah, now's the time you guys get to choose your own adventure. And don't forget that even if you make mistakes and even if things go bad or you make a really, really bad career decision, I've done it multiple times, there are do-overs. There are ways to, you're never stuck and that's the thing, like with STEM too, you never quite feel stuck because you know that you can take all these skills that you're getting and you can transfer them to just about anything. Most machinists become engineers, or engineers, will sometimes become machinists, or we got welders. They're all interrelated. And, so there's so many different disciplines. I see you guys have even the people who drive, you guys have presenters, right? You have business roles. I love that, FIRST has so many different roles involved too. So everybody can find that one area that interests them, but they might also get an opportunity to try something new. So, and keep trying stuff that's new, even when you're older. I think a lot of this sounds bad, but I think a lot of the times people get ornery as we get older because we stop trying new things and we stop having adventures and we stop doing the things that kind of make us feel alive, right? And I'll be here all weekend. In fact, I'll be here till Sunday. So if you guys need anything, just flag me down. Come see me at the machine shop. And I love to talk. I'll talk your ear off, I promise. So, but come visit me and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay? Thank you guys. Very